Johnny, I'm so looking forward to this conversation, even how all the timing has worked out. I know that there's something special that is meant for the listener. I feel like that all the time anyway, but just the cooperative components that have come together for us to be talking right now.
Yeah.
I just want to be mindful of that. So I know you were already going to bring your A game and no pressure, but I'm very, very glad you're here.
Thank you. Me too. I'm so excited.
I'm so glad. So I would love to start by knowing how are you saying yes to yourself in this season?
It's actually a perfect question because I'm currently unemployed.
Okay.
I lost my job in middle of January. I finished out my schedule, and I was like, you know what? I'm taking February off. I've never done that. I've never
Amazing.
I have savings. I'm like, I can make this happen, and I did. And it's been so wonderful. I don't want to go back to work. I just love it.
Yay. So what is that saying to you?
Oh, it's saying I really just want to start doing this. I want to start talking to people. I want to start just really, because I mean, that was the whole point of releasing the book was to help people walk through some of their toughest times. And I'm like, I can do that right now. And I really
Right.
want to.
Yes. So you're so brave to, I mean, it takes a ton of courage to leave a marriage. It
Yeah.
takes a ton of courage to leave an engagement. It takes a ton of courage to break up with your boyfriend. Like this is big stakes, courageous moves. You're so brave. And I see you in that and I applaud you and I see
Oh.
myself and applaud myself in that as well. Um, and I love that although the decisions that you made were for you and y- your own protection, your own desire for your own self-care. But not everybody wants to talk about it
Mhm.
or help people through that. And so I understand because that's all I want to do as well. And so I'm really interested in knowing prior to the circumstances that were what caused you to write the book, were you already like in this coaching, mentorship, come with me sort of um, practice, or has this just developed as you've exercised these muscles?
No, I was a youth and young adult pastor for almost 20 years.
Oh
And
my gosh, me
so
too.
look at that.
How funny. Oh gosh, I
So
love this
great.
conversation. I like talking to myself.
There you
More
go.
about us. Say more about us. I'm so eager to find out.
Well, and that was the thing, you spend so much time really because as a pastor, they come to you specifically for help,
Yeah.
for prayer, for guidance, and so I loved that aspect because it just meant, you know, because people don't talk about it. People don't talk
Mhm.
about what they're going through. And if they're talking to you finally about it, then it's really weighing on them. And
Right.
so you have this responsibility to take it seriously, to really show up and show that you care, show that you're here for them in this moment. They have your undivided attention, and we're going to pray and we're going to like really understand what's going on. And so I loved that. That was like, yeah, sign me up. I'll do that all day long. And I didn't have to have like a like a psychology degree. I wasn't your therapist. I was
Right.
literally just there to see you walk through this and to encourage you and to love on you. And that's what I loved. Loved.
Okay. So if you, since you can be, do, and have anything you desire, and you're looking into this moment of time where you are taking some weeks off, but if you could orchestrate what was next, what do you think that would be? And then we'll talk about all the other stuff.
all the other stuff.
But I love holding space for dreams and for discovery and for curiosity. And after you say it out loud, if you say, "Oh my gosh, can we please edit that out?" We can totally edit that out. But it is safe to dream. And I believe that these dreams are in you because
Mhm.
these dreams are for you.
Yeah.
So I am interested to know what the most expansive future version of yourself
Um,
is.
I honestly would love to be a speaker, but not in the sense like I don't speak about leadership. Like I just love telling stories and what I learned from them,
Mhm.
you know. And to be fair, that's probably because I was a pastor, so you're constantly sharing your stuff and sharing stories, and this is what I learned out of this situation. And I just kind of feel like because my whole story is all about the trauma that I went through and what I learned from it, but also that I refuse to allow trauma to define me, you know, and it sucks because you go one or two ways with it. You can be either really angry and bitter and why is this always happening to me? What is going on? Or you can choose, well, this is what's happening to me, but I choose to respond out of love or kindness or understanding or emotional intelligence. That's what I want to talk about because we get so upset. And I watched it. I watched it happen with my ex-husband. I watched it happen with his friends, specifically, again, with the church. You know, people just get so angry and so hurt. And there's better ways to heal. There's better ways to heal than to let it change who you are, to let it chip away at everything that you want to be, or you get a chip on your shoulder. Um, you can walk away from it and still be happy and still
Yes.
look at that, all that trauma and be like, it sucked, but I learned so much about who I am and who I want to be out of that. You know, for me, that's what is most important. But we don't talk about that. You know, we just talk about, especially now, cancel culture. You know, something bad happens, just cut them out of your life. You know, like block them, do all this, and it's like we're losing so many relationships that we could be having with friends and family and loved ones and siblings and neighbors. We're losing out on what makes us as people really thrive as relationships and how to do them right. You know, so that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about relationships. I don't need to talk to you about how to be a good leader. I don't need to talk to you about, that kind of stuff. Like, how do you build relationships and how do you do it well? And a lot of it comes from here first.
All of it comes from
Yeah.
her first, I think, as we point to ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think a redefinition of of how relationships look as we are evolving,
Hmm.
how we're showing up in our relationships changes. So, in some instances, we're breaking social contracts. In some instances, we are saying, this relationship is over. Are you interested in starting a new one where we stop this toxic behavior and do something better? And you mentioned grace and kindness in the midst of these relationships, and I think there also can be a fine tuning of that definition because sometimes we hear um, grace and kindness means, oh, I'm supposed to tolerate
Yeah.
your bad behavior because that's what would make me a good Christian, or that's what Jesus would be proud of. And I'm like, I personally am having a new experience. In this point in my journey, I have never felt closer to God and farther away from the church
Hmm.
than I have. So I'm redefining for me what actually makes Jesus proud, what
Yeah.
God meant when he said love and and all of these things. So this is a really fascinating conversation for me to have because our backgrounds have some similarities, so I know how to speak that language and
Hmm.
but I'm running it through a different filter than I used to when I spoke that language. So
Yep.
Um, it's feeling like I feel like I'm always present for the conversations, but this one is taking some brain power and really anchoring in like, oh yeah, I can talk about church and not be triggered. I can talk about love and what we're going to do with this information because I think there are narratives everywhere in every organization, in every family, in every relationship that are no longer in service.
Yeah.
And there are portions of our identity that are our truth to our core that don't change. And so it's how this all coexists and how we grow together
Mhm.
and how we navigate even when relationships, not toxic, unhealthy marriages, like we know those have to go away.
Yeah.
Um, but but these other relationships that we have where there's change, there's movement, there's momentum, and sometimes we're doing that together, and then sometimes we're growing in a different direction than the people that we used to be in relationship with,
Hmm.
and allowing for that and trusting that it doesn't mean one of us is doing it wrong.
Right.
It means that the time that we're walking together has run its course.
Yeah. I definitely agree that. I think there are definitely relationships that we need to be okay with letting go. And so that's where I kind of go into the corporate space to talk about, why why is your leadership team so upset right now? It's because, you're trying to hold on to something and the change is what needs to happen. And so I worked with a company for like 9 months and I told them, I was like, I don't know that I can't fix the problems that you guys are having, but what I am going to help you do is learn how to communicate the problems that you're feeling, the feelings that you're having about these situations. And then you get to decide, when you communicate, when you share something, you give that person, whoever relationship, whatever you're trying to build, you give them the opportunity to either show up and exceed and you grow and everything, or you give them the opportunity to say, this probably isn't for me. And the problem, and that's fine. That's for me, I'm like, cool, okay, I get it. We're great. I still care about you as a human. I still want to see you eat. It just didn't work out. But if I don't communicate what I need out of this relationship or, this building that we're doing, then it's on me for, being stuck or being frustrated. I have to ask, did I say something about this to make sure? And yeah. And 9 times out of 10, it has always worked out for me, at least. I'll be able to communicate and then I see the results and the relationship grows. I think it's just
Right.
beautiful.
Yes. And sometimes a relationship growing is parting.
Yeah.
Like that is the growth.
Hmm.
Like I'm not sure, and I want to talk about whatever you want to talk about with regard to leaving your marriage. But for me, my courage set both of us free.
Hmm.
And I could, focus on all the reasons that made my courage the right choice, or I could focus on the freedom.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to focus on the freedom, but I also want to hold space for you to talk about like what are you feeling that people need to hear or need to say that is not a part of conversation? Like, what prompted you to write the book?
I wrote it because one, I get in my brain a lot, so I have to write, and that is the only way for me to work through. My ex-husband and I, we were married for 15 years, and we spent 8 of it in therapy.
Hmm.
And we tried. I
Yeah.
did, but my therapist, suggested the writing, and so that really helped me. So as I was going through the divorce and the issues that were coming up at every turn, it was a very contentious divorce. And I just had to write because I knew that I would drown in all of my anger. And
Mhm.
that's I did that was the reason I was getting out of the marriage was because I was so miserable. So I needed to write all of that. So writing it all down and then trying to just process my feelings between what it was like to raise the kids, to approach life so differently now because as a single parent, what did that look like? What did it look like to have, my ex-husband tell my kids, your mom's going to hell. She doesn't, like all of the faith-based stuff that he was doing to scare them,
Mhm.
um, to write out why that was something I would have to address later. Like we get to make choices. That's the beauty of free will. That is the beauty that God gave us was so that we could make free will choices. Now, is he going to agree with them all? Probably not, but like we're still our own free people for a reason. So it was just like writing all of that out was where the book started and
Yeah.
why it started.
It's amazing. And what are you seeing as far as response and like how people are able to integrate the learnings that you had in your experience to their lives if they're not in that same situation?
Actually, I haven't heard a lot. The book's only been out for about 6 months. I've got some good reviews on there, but I think the very first review that came in, I had sent out my advanced reader copy and I sent it to a coworker, another manager at the restaurant with me. And she wrote me the next day and she said, I just want you to know. She said, I read the whole thing in one sitting.
Oh
And
my
I was like,
gosh,
oh, okay.
amazing.
I was just like, wow. And she said, after everything that you've gone through, to have so much love and kindness still is pretty incredible. And for me, I was like, that's all I needed. I
Right.
don't, I get that my story isn't for everyone. There's a lot of abuse in there. There's religious abuse. There's, the mental and physical stuff that happened with my ex-husband. So it's not for everyone,
Sure.
but it definitely, I want it to find it in the hands of people who aren't ready to talk about stuff yet. Like that
Right.
for me is the big thing. Like you're not ready to talk about it yet. You're not ready to make that decision yet. Or maybe you're trying to make that decision and you feel guilty about that decision.
Mhm.
You're staying and you don't really want to stay, but you feel like you have to stay. Like any of those things that you
Right.
wrestle with. I just want my story to have already been there. Like I've already
Right.
been there. I've been outcast by the church. I still have love and kindness. Like I've done all of these. I've slept in my car because my ex-husband got me kicked out of the house. So it's like I've done all of this. You will survive. It's
Right.
scary. It's so scary and it's hard and you have so many feelings and but someone's been there. And that's essentially really all I want is for people to go, I'm not alone in this.
Right. That's so beautiful. And to give them the language for the
Mhm.
things they can't talk about yet.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's really beautiful and so generous of you.
Oh, thank you. I did
And
it
I,
all.
please, I'm sorry I cut
Oh,
you
no,
off.
no, no. It was so the entire so it's like, my childhood story, my marriage, and then even what it was like to start dating. I
Oh,
included that particular
say more because I don't know that yet.
Oh Lord. Yeah. But just because it was all brand new experiences. I got married when I was 20 years old and I got divorced when I was 36. So to start dating at that age and I had only, been in the church and now I'm outside the church and it's like wild. So I mean, I write about everything so that people understand it's very crazy, all this whole new life that you're choosing for yourself. But you don't have to worry about it. You're going to make mistakes and you get to choose what you want to do with those mistakes, how you want to
Right.
become a different person. So,
Right.
yeah.
I know for me, there was, people would say, like, oh my gosh, I know this is so hard. I know this. And of course, there are things that are very challenging in
Mhm.
that process, in sitting in the question, making the decision. And then um, I had I had a quietly contentious divorce, but just like I had a quietly contentious marriage.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it was and that was actually the wake up call. My divorce process was 3.5 years.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? And I was just thinking, a friend was talking to me at the beginning of 2025, and this was like he moved out in the summer of 2022. So now 2025, she's like, "What's happening?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, is this still what is happening?" And I thought, this divorce process is looking exactly like my marriage.
Mm.
I'm waiting in silence, hoping for the best. And that is not a strategy. And that
No.
is not even what I want to do. And I think for me, it was like, that's so low vibe and so rear view mirror. And I'm like 30 miles down the road. Like, I can't, we're still talking about this. So
Yeah.
even with like that realization and that, like, okay, I am, I was already done. I've been done so many times, but now I'm done with this part and we got to make stuff happen. But even in that decision, there was still, it was still 6 more months until an actual settlement got signed. And then the settlement got signed, and then 3 more months before a court date. And it was a virtual court date, which was fantastic because I just happened to be in France because
Oh.
it got rescheduled. I'm all, this is perfect. This is talk about my future me. And then, so then you think, okay, great. That means it's final. 30 days from that is final. No, there's still, that's been 6 months and they're still moving money from one account. It's like, oh my gosh. So when I say all of that to, I get that these are big decisions. I
Yeah.
get that it's going to be hard. For
Mhm.
me, like this part of the hard is way easier than living an unlived life.
Mhm.
So, like we're managing what hard we're available for and what type of hard we're not available for. But so often we are energetically complete before the physical catches up. And so, for anyone that's sitting in any question, please know that it's not the day you decide is not the day you like cash your
Yeah.
check and get everything divided and all the stuff. It's still, there's still this process. And so, for me, and I would love to hear your thoughts about this, there's so much to the momentum, the
Mhm.
intention. You said you're doing writing. I journal. I'm not a writer, but I have a journaling practice. I have a morning practice. So there is this intentional momentum in the direction of the women that we're becoming.
Mhm.
And we're it. Like we need to keep this thing. I want to be careful. I'm almost said we need to keep this thing going. And that's also not true because I believe God's calling us to him. And that is not efforting, it's allowing. But
Mhm.
but there is inspired action and there is, we have to make moves. We have to make decisions. We have to follow through.
Yeah.
And when we're making a decision like this to complete, no one else is helping us. No one's doing it for us, and no one's even doing it with us.
Mhm.
How was that for you?
Um, that is where I just anchored down on my reasons. So when I told my kids, when we sat them down and told them, my daughter was too little, but my son, I just looked at him. I said, I want you to see two happy homes. Like
Yeah.
that is all I want for you. Right now, we're one miserable one. We're always miserable. And you deserve happy homes. So I anchored down on that. So anytime that I came up against conflict or, people were second guessing me or all of that kind of stuff, that was the same thing every time. I was like, nope, two happy homes. I'm anchoring down. This is what I'm going for. So it was that one. It was also, the abuse and the mental anguish and everything that I was going through. I I remember my ex-husband tried to blame everything on me. He wrote this note to his family about his alcoholism and just, threw me under the bus 100% and said, you don't know this, but Johnny's abusing me. My ex-husband was 400 pounds. I was not abusing him. So it was just like all of these things. And I just remember knowing that his family got this letter, I looked at him and I said, Chad, if our son sent me this letter, I'd be looking at him and saying, get out of that marriage. I
Yeah.
would be telling him that. And so I looked at him and I was like, if that's the way you really feel in this marriage, then we need to be done.
Yeah.
Like if you're willing and able and desired to say all of this stuff about me, your wife, to your family, then we
Mhm.
need to be done. So like I just kept anchoring down on these things. Like you and he'd come back and back talk. No, I just, I was really in the moment. I don't care. I don't care.
Right.
At the end of the day, you said this about me, and wow, I would never allow my child in that. So I anchored down in that. And then the big one was, especially, as the church started finding out, I had one of my clients, I used to clean houses, and she was with the church. And she's like, I heard we're praying for you. And then she's like, God hates divorce. And I was just like, mm-hmm. And, but I just remember in my spirit, I was just like, yeah, but God loves me. Like
Yeah.
I get that he hates divorce, but he loves me.
Yeah.
And
God hates
so
judging too.
yeah, FYI.
Yeah.
But so it was like every time I had little moments like that, I got to the point where I was getting so many of them that I just wrote them down. Like I just wrote them down and I put them in my, because I was working at the hospital, so I put them in my badge. So every time I had something come up, I just write it down and just remember. And so I just anchored, 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 anchored. And that's what got me through
Right.
because, people we had this concept when I was in Bible college. They said if you can be talked, whoever spends the most time wins. So if you got someone who's constantly spending a lot of time with you, they're able to feed you such and such. This is how you should think. This is how you should act, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. So whoever spends the most time wins. Well, I needed me to win. So
That's
I
right.
needed to
Yeah.
continually just remind myself, spend time with me, spend time in my head, spend time with why I was doing it because
Yeah.
I needed to win. And
Right.
for me and I didn't want to be talked into something, like I would have to eventually one stand before God or two stand in front of my kids and be like, okay, I made the decision and I'm being accountable to my decision. And I wanted to be okay with that.
Right.
That's
That's
how I did
beautiful.
it.
Yes. And anchoring in those practices, I mean,
Mhm.
that's alignment. That's you are one with yourself. So
Yeah.
then when the comments come and people share their opinions that are different than our course of action, we are grounded
Mhm.
and we can say, "Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. I'm still doing this and it sounds
Yep.
like you're going to do that and okay. It's so good." You talk about this this concept that some people experience that's different than what happened for you and I, but you call it why we stay
Mhm.
and the lies we believe about love. I'm
Mhm.
interested to hear more about that.
Um, Definitely for the first one, or the second one, I grew up in the church, obviously, and I was always told about unconditional love, but I just never saw it. And for me, even the way that faith was presented, the church was presented, you got this unconditional love, but there were so many rules. There was expectations. You had to be a good little girl. You
You
had to
know,
be
those are the
beautiful.
conditions.
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, I've spent my entire life trying to check boxes off
Right.
of, if I do this, I will get this in return. And I just didn't, like I was the good Christian girl. I went to Bible college, found a Bible husband, pastor, and I was miserable, miserable, just crying tears. And it was just finally, it was just like, man. all of these things that I've been spending looking for love, turns out that I do a better job loving myself when
Mhm.
I'm like, all right, bye, like that kind of thing. Because that's where I decided, not necessarily even boundaries, but just I deserved better. All this stuff that I kept being told that I would get if I showed up the way that I was supposed to, I never got. And so I was like, all right, well, then I'm just going to start living my life. I'm 36 and miserable. So for me, that was that whole love aspect, is understanding that unconditional love is not really real. I wish it was, but it's not. And unfortunately, well, I take that back. I
Yeah,
mean, it is,
it
but like
is.
with
Right. Yeah.
with people, like there are conditions sometimes. And for me, I just decided, okay, I'm gonna lean into the unconditional love I can have for myself.
I have a reframe from that as well because I grew up with the same language and also went to Bible college because we're the same person.
Yeah.
And what my understanding of unconditional love was everything that you said, that like it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter what we do, but here's the list of things not to do. Like
Yeah.
it was all just so confusing
Hmm.
to look back on. It was like, how in the world did I ever think this? And how in the world did they ever like just see, like, how did they believe it too? I mean, that's a whole other show, which I won't. It's whoever it's working for, yay.
Yeah.
If it's working for you, yay. Perfect. I'm zero judgment because I'm not available to receive any judgment on what was not working for me. But what I'm understanding more about unconditional love, and for me, I can better live into the definition of unconditional alignment,
Hmm.
which for me means I am centered, I am grounded, regardless of what's happening around me. So the conditions around me do not affect my personal alignment. The conditions around me do not affect my love.
Yeah.
I love,
Hmm.
and I love me. So a part of that love means I'm not going to be in the proximity of that guy or of that place because I don't experience the love that feels good in my body when I'm in those situations. So I also had to reframe my understanding of what unconditional meant. It,
Hmm.
it's less about action, and it for me it's become more about, oh, I'm anchored in the second part of that phrase, and I
Hmm.
used to be anchored in the first part.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought it was tolerating really bad behavior in the name of Jesus. That's what I thought unconditional love was.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
I'm
and unfortunately it's reinforced. And that was the part of the problem with, the pastoral role there too, is because,
sure.
it was an easy weapon for him to use against me,
Right.
was, you're outside of God because you're not hitting these expectations. Yeah. So
Right.
it was an easy weapon, and it was one that kept me aligned, and my parents did it too. Like I've experienced that my entire life, and that's what's in the book, is talking about how I slowly shed all of those things, but at the same time it cost me, when I finally had to stand up to my parents and assert my own will. They didn't talk to me for 2 years. They didn't come to my wedding. They didn't, so it's like you're going to make the hard choices and there's going to be consequences with them, but you got to anchor down into why and what's most important. So,
Right, because you are not leaving you.
yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So they didn't come to your wedding, which means there was a wedding.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I got married to my ex-husband, yes.
Oh, that one. Okay.
That one. Yeah.
I thought you had, you're already over here.
No.
Okay. Okay.
No.
Good to know. So, I think it's really interesting when the the kind of the tagline of the book, the thing that makes you want to read it because people are curious. People
Hmm.
want to know, like, oh my gosh, and it was a traumatic, awful marriage. Oh gosh, that's even, of course, I mean, I don't mean to say this is going to sound mean or something. I'm not trying like that, but we know that's what sells books, right? Like
Yeah.
people, and it sells books because that is a connection point, because there is pain in the world, and people want to either be reminded that they're not alone in it, or they
Hmm.
want to be reminded that theirs isn't as bad as somebody else's, or they want to be reminded that there's hope. Like these are all good things, and they make sense. It's story. It's
Yeah.
how we relate to each other. As you have spent this time in writing the book, in processing all of this, and now in promoting the book,
Hmm.
how are you navigating this hard copy thing that's about a life that is in your rearview mirror? And again, this anchoring in, this alignment and focus on the woman you're becoming. So how are you balancing that? And how is the woman you're becoming the new narrator of the story that you wrote?
Yeah. That's a big question. For me,
What I'm here for, Queen. Big questions.
when so I had written a good chunk of the book, in 2026 or 2016, sorry.
Got it.
And so I had written a good chunk of that for like 8 months. I was just journaling and then put it all together. But when I brought it to the book company that was going to publish it, 2 years ago, so I'd been sitting on it for a while.
Okay.
They told me, they were like, so give us more context of why it was such a big deal for you to get a divorce. And so that's why I brought in all my history, my
Yeah.
childhood, the religious stuff. And it turned into, for a little bit there, it turned into like more of how to help people come overcome religious trauma. And
Mm.
so I'm seeing the narrative switch. So that whole narrative question and into who I'm becoming, if I do end up going down the speaking route, I want to be able to partner with churches that understand that there are people that have suffered from religious trauma and really be more proactive in having conversations about it. And what does that look like? And yeah, we might still be doing these things that we weren't fully aware were, you know, conditioning us to allow things to happen. And so I would love to be able to go into churches and have these conversations and talk about it openly and understand because, the whole mental health awareness, everyone has gotten onto that because we were so struggling with mental health. And there are so many people that are still struggling with religious trauma. And
Yeah.
we're just, like they put it on the, big abuses, like, oh, this child, all that big stuff. But we still have little stuff that is really hurting who we can
Pervasive.
be. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I would love to be able to. So that's what I'm hoping my narrative moves into is to start having that honest conversation with churches that partner and understand that that is a real issue. We have to build trust. We have to build relationship. And the only way to do that is by talking and
Right.
communicating. And so I look at that as I'm reliving and I'm started my audiobook. So I've been like rereading all the chapters again. And it's just, as I'm going through it, I'm just reminded again and again, like these are the things that I hope someone sees, that someone says,
Right.
hey, can you come and speak at this? Can you come talk to the women at our women's conference? Come talk to marriages and what this looks like. And, I would love to do all of those things. So that's what I'm hoping the woman I'm growing into is, really just reaffirming as I go through this process of selling the book and
Hey,
marketing the book and talking about the book, it hopefully will turn into that. So we'll see.
I love that. And that is big, brave work,
Thanks.
but necessary.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. What, if you were invited to speak at the church you grew up in,
hmm
what would that seminar, what would that workshop sound like?
I guess some of it would come down to, again, I tell stories. So my stories would be about what life was like growing up in such a church-filled space and the stories. Now, what one thing that I am able to distinguish in the book particularly, and then I would be able to on the stage, is my father was a very abusive man. So he used the word of God as a weapon, but he didn't just do it with me. He did it with everyone, and so recognizing that we've given a tool for something that's supposed to help with growth and awareness and life in general, but in the wrong hands, this is what happens. And you have to check yourself as a Christian. The one that my father used to use all the time was you could judge the fruit of the tree, right? And so he was judged. He was a judge and jury to everyone. And how do you take those verses and use them in a way that actually helps the tree produce better fruit as opposed to cutting it down, where as him, he would cut it down. And I think we're missing the mark on some of those things. Instead, we're living in a fear-based situation where we're constantly being judged, we're constantly being tested, we're constantly, when the truth is that's not what that was supposed to be. If a tree is bearing bad fruit, then you replant it. You look at how you fix the soil. That's what you do. And that's what we know when we're outside of the church, but when we're in the church,
Right.
we struggle with that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's how I would see a conversation like that go.
Right. I love that. As I mentioned before, like I am removed myself
hmm
from church, but there are all of the things that I learned as a little girl that are about God. Like I believe that. It's the interactions that I had with I mean, over the whole course of my life, a handful of interactions with people
hmm
that is what I've separated from.
Yeah.
So it happens in friendship groups, it happens in work relations, like it happens in all these things, but it feels bigger. It feels more wrong
hmm
when it's with church. And so I love that you are wanting to bridge this gap, that it's doesn't have to be yes or no,
Yeah.
and that there gets to be repair
hmm
from a place of alignment, from a place of not rewarding bad behavior, but regardless of who, I mean, both parties think the other one is behaving badly, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah, I just feel like it's a shaking up of what's no longer working.
hmm Yeah.
It's not a sustainable model to scare people into acting the way that makes you feel better about you.
Yeah,
Like, and that
exactly.
one's not in the Bible. And I
Nope.
don't think that it's that simple of a thought process. I think everyone is well-meaning, of course. I
hmm
mean, they love Jesus, so of course it's well-meaning, but there's something happens and then there's a disconnect and then there's a whole system that's built on the disconnected part
Yep.
rather than on the relationship, the connection with our creator.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. I don't know, have you ever seen the TV show, it's HBO series, The Vow? It was
No.
about the the cult Nexium.
Okay.
So it was so crazy because I was already out of the church and doing stuff, and this special came out and I started watching it because I'm just fascinated, like
Yes.
psychology, all that stuff. And it had there been any kind of like Bible scripture or anything in there, I would have swore you were talking about our church. Like everything that they did from the retreats they took to the way that they handled intermarriage conflicts, like apart from the other cults, like the sex stuff and whatever, they were parallel. And it crazy to go through that and being like, wow, all it takes is just a swing one way for
Hmm.
something to go dangerously wrong with how we're presenting this faith model, this belief system, all of it. You had a cult leader who had these beliefs and had this thing, and he was able to build a cult. Whereas if we're not careful with the pastor that we entrust, like you can build and just swings ever so slightly. So it was crazy to watch that. And that's why I think it's so important to have these conversations about like the trauma that you're going through, but then also to know that you're aligned with God on your terms, how
Right.
you have found him, how he speaks to you. For me, I think that that is just absolutely huge because then you don't, you can see the swings and you can be like, well, I'm gonna let you're having a moment. You're on a
Right.
rant, like I'm gonna let
Right.
you have, and I'm not gonna all the way buy in because
Yeah.
I know what aligns with me. So many people are used to buying in 100%, 100%, 100%, and they're not able to, on their own, recognize, I don't know that that's necessarily right,
Right.
And I think that that is something that well, when I was in the church, um, didn't really consider as much. We just spent so much time, you know, having this mission of getting people in the church, getting them saved, not understanding, we get to let them figure things out on their own,
Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah. Like I said, it's big work. I'm glad it's your calling.
it was funny when I was young, they would always be like, who are you called to? Some people want to go to missions and everything. And I was like, I'm called to the church. And it has never felt more true than now. It's just like, oh, all right, you're right.
Yep, you're the girl for the job then.
No.
That's beautiful. And I am cheering you on from here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Please tell everyone where they can find and follow you, how they can get the book, all the good things.
Yeah. The book is available Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Goodreads, Ingram Spark. It's kind of everywhere. And then you can find me on LinkedIn for my corporate work, but I'm also on Instagram. So author Joni Woods. And please follow me because I lost my Instagram account over the summer. And so I'm down to like 90 followers again. I'm like, oh, I
Oh,
got to rebuild.
that's okay. You're a new person.
I'm a new person. So yeah, that's yeah. And then my website, johnnywoods.com. They can email me there, get connected.
Perfect. We'll link everything down in the show notes.
Okay,
Thank you so much, Johnny. I love this conversation.
you too.